Okay, picture this for a second. A blockchain that can reach right into the XRP ledger and actually hold the keys to a wallet sitting over there. Not wrap the token, not build one of those bridges. I mean literally custody an XRP account and sign transactions for it inside a sealed piece of hardware that no human being on Earth can crack open. Sounds like it shouldn't be possible, right? Well, Flare just built it. They call it confidential compute. And here's the genuinely wild part. The vote to switch this thing on is live this very week as I'm sitting here recording. So let's slow down and talk about what Flare actually just pulled off, because I really don't think most people have clocked how big a deal this is. So to really get why this matters, you've got to see the shape of what Flare's been quietly building. And honestly, once it clicks, it's kind of elegant. Think of it like this. For a blockchain to be genuinely useful across the whole crypto world, it needs to do three things. It needs to read what's happening on other chains, it needs to move assets between them, and it needs to actually do something with them. Now, Flare nailed the first two a while ago. The reading part, that's their Oracle system, the stuff that pulls in prices and real-world data and hands it to smart contracts. The moving part, that's F-Assets, the way they bring XRP and a few other outside coins into their DeFi world. But that third leg, actually reaching out and acting on another chain, that was always the missing piece. And confidential compute is Flare finally growing that leg. The way they pull it off is with something called a trusted execution environment, a TEE. Now, don't let the jargon scare you off. This is simpler than it sounds. A TEE is basically a sealed black box tucked inside a computer chip, and it's got two little superpowers. Whatever runs inside stays completely private, nobody can peek in, and at the same time, it can prove to the outside world that it ran exactly the code it was supposed to, so you get privacy and proof in the same box. That combination right there is the whole ball game, and it's the first real piece of what Flare calls Flare 2.0 actually going live. Okay, so here's where it gets genuinely cool. The headline feature riding on top of these sealed black boxes is something called a protocol managed wallet. And the first time you really hear how it works, it's a little mind-bending. So normally, if you want a smart contract on one chain to control money over on another chain, you've got two options, and both kind of stink. You either trust a custodian, some company holding the keys for you, or you use a bridge. And look, we all know how that story tends to end. Bridges have been drained for billions over the years. Flare's answer is basically, what if nobody ever holds the key at all? So with a protocol-managed wallet, the private key to an XRP Ledger account gets born inside the sealed box, and it never, ever leaves. No human sees it, no company custodies it, it just lives and dies inside the hardware. And here's the piece that makes it something you can actually trust. That key will only sign a transaction when a weighted majority of Flare's data providers agree it's the real deal. So you're not betting on one lonely machine behaving. It's the hardware and Flare's whole consensus working together before a single XRP ever moves. Their CEO, Hugo Philion, put it really cleanly. He said, the XRP ledger is the layer where the assets get issued, and Flare becomes the compute layer that adds the smart features on top. XRP's first out the gate, by the way, with Bitcoin and Dogecoin on the roadmap behind it. So really, Flare is trying to become the brain that can safely operate accounts all over crypto, without ever turning into the bank that holds your coins. Now, none of this actually works without a second upgrade happening quietly underneath it. And this is exactly the kind of detail most coverage skips clean over. It's called the Flare Data Connector, version 2, FDC v2 for short. The old version used to bundle requests together into rounds that took about 90 seconds to settle up. Totally fine for slow-moving stuff, but way too sluggish for a wallet that needs to act. Version 2 throws out the waiting room. It verifies each request on its own, one at a time, inside those same sealed environments. And that's the proof layer. It's what lets a protocol managed wallet turn around and say, yes, this really did happen on the XRP ledger. Here's the receipt before it ever signs. And here's the timely part. As I'm recording this, the community is literally voting right now on whether to switch all of this on. The proposal's called STP13, and it turns confidential compute on for Songbird first. Songbird is Flare's canary network. Think of it as the crash test track, where you run something live but lower stakes before it ever goes near the main network. And the vote itself has this quirk I kind of love. It's a rejection vote, meaning it passes unless enough people specifically show up to block it. Silence counts as a yes, so the burden gets flipped. The community has to actively vote it down, or it just sails through. And there's this honest little admission tucked right into the proposal. It says out loud that this ships to a live network while the security audits are still only partway finished. They just tell you. And honestly, I respect that a lot more than pretending everything's already bulletproof. So let me put my skeptic hat on for a minute, because if I only gave you the shiny version, I wouldn't be doing my job. Here's maybe the most important sentence in this whole video. Verifiable is not the same thing as trustless. Those two words sound like twins. They are not. The pitch paints this lovely picture of sealed boxes scattered all over the planet, built by different manufacturers, so no single failure can ever hurt you. And that genuinely is the goal. It's the end state they're designing toward. But today, at launch, every one of these boxes is run by the Flare Foundation itself on Google's cloud. One operator, one provider. So the big decentralization story is a direction they're heading, not where things actually stand on day one. And these chips aren't magic either. Security researchers have shown, more than once, that under the right lab conditions, you can pry your way into supposedly sealed hardware. There was a fresh round of exactly that just last year. Flare knows this perfectly well, and it's the whole reason they lean on that consensus layer instead of trusting one box on its own. Now, to be totally fair, here's the positive flip side. What Flare's doing is actually different from most of the confidential computing crowd. A lot of those projects use these boxes just for private number crunching. Flare is using them to custody real accounts on chains that don't even have smart contracts of their own, wired straight into its core protocol. That's a genuinely fresh angle. And one more honest note that made me trust them more, not less. They're careful not to overclaim. That proposal doesn't even mention F assets. The big institutional stuff everyone gets excited about is described as where this is heading, not what ships next week. And that restraint is exactly why you can take the rest of it seriously. Okay, so where's all of this actually headed? Because this is the part that got me leaning forward. Remember how those sealed boxes can run any code privately and still prove they ran it honestly? Now point that straight at artificial intelligence. Flare's already shipped an early open source toolkit, the Flare AI Kit, for building AI agents that run inside these confidential environments. One of their hackathon winners literally ran a Google Gemini model inside one of these boxes and could prove the answer came from the real model, completely untampered with. Now stretch that forward a little. An AI agent that holds its own wallet, makes its decisions privately, and can prove it played fair the whole time. That's the future they're openly chasing. And on the institutional side, Philion's talked about banks trading and lending against XRP-backed assets without broadcasting every move to the whole market and getting front run. Private, but still verifiable. And for serious money, that's a genuinely big deal. So let me land this with something you can actually go do, not just nod along to. First, that vote I keep mentioning is live this week. If you hold any Songbird stake, go read STP13 for yourself and vote. It's a rejection vote, remember, so showing up genuinely counts. Second, if you're a builder, or honestly even just curious, That Flare AI kit is open source, sitting right there on GitHub, so go poke around in it. And third, honestly, just keep an eye on Songbird over the next few weeks. That little canary network is about to become one of the most interesting test labs in all of crypto. Because if a blockchain really can safely hold another chain's keys, then a whole pile of things we always assumed needed a middleman suddenly don't. So, to bring it all the way home, remember that sealed wallet I asked you to picture at the very start? That right there is the whole story. Flare spent years learning to read other chains and pull their assets in. And confidential compute is them finally growing that third leg, the ability to reach out and actually act, holding real keys inside sealed hardware, guarded by consensus instead of a custodian. It's early, it's canary first. And yeah, those honest little caveats are real. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But the direction they're pointing at, a world where your XRP can go and do things right across crypto, and nobody has to hold it hostage to make that happen. And that, to me, is a future genuinely worth understanding early. So if this helped the whole thing finally click for you, do me one quick favor and hit subscribe. That's honestly how this channel grows, and it means more than you'd think. Drop a comment and tell me what you want me to break down next, and I'll see you in the next one.